This is going to be one of those videos where I give you some insight into how I'm feeling when it comes to Xbox and just a little bit of a history. I've been around a very long time. I've been playing games a very long time. Since the Atari, I've lived through the marketing of blast processing, and it's interesting that all the way up until now, we still have this, teraflop marketing. It's kind of just like blast processing. Not a great metric to determine whether or not a system is going to be for you. It should be about how things look when you're playing them or the games. But an interesting thing happened where I'm starting to think more about the future and the ideas and some of the conventions that I had that may not be accurate. So, I come from a generation where you bought a system for a game that you couldn't get anywhere else. And I'm still that person, but I have to weigh that with the fact that I'm old. And a lot of the things that used to be, in my opinion, great just aren't there anymore. Kids just don't care about the things that I care about. I went to visit some family around the holidays, and my nephew is playing on his PlayStation 5, and he has about 100 friends on his friends list, which is insane to me. But all of them only play one game. Fortnite. And if they play two games, it's Fortnite and NBA 2K. And that's it. I asked him about Spider-Man. I asked him about Last of Us. I asked him about, Ratchet and Clank. I talked to him about Game Pass. Nobody knows what this stuff is. They don't care at all. So then I started to think about some things about, exclusives and buying a console for games you can't get anywhere else. And then another thing happened where we had to run out and get some stuff, and he came with me. And in the car, he's sitting there on his phone. And I said, "What are you doing?" "Oh, I'm playing Fortnite." And then it hit me. The future isn't me. The future isn't what I love or what I think is important or what I think is driving success right now. The future is that kid. Where is he going to play? Well, he bought a PlayStation. He's got a PlayStation 5. He doesn't have an Xbox. So I think Sony has some magic still left there when it comes to people choosing a console. They walk into a store. PlayStation as a brand is incredibly strong. It's sort of just something that rolls off your tongue when you think video games. It's either Nintendo or it's PlayStation. So I think they're safe in that regard. But I started to think about Microsoft and this mantra of they're losing. You constantly see it, right? They're selling less than the Xbox One. That's a losing situation. No one's buying their console. No one's playing their games. And I started to think to myself, well, they may be losing themselves into winning, which sounds strange. Look, I'm not saying that the PlayStation 5 isn't a great system. I'm not saying that you shouldn't go get a PlayStation 5. I'm not saying that it isn't the most successful when it comes to comparing the Xbox to the PlayStation this generation. What I am saying is that you keep hearing about costs and how expensive things are. And then I started to think about what made the PlayStation 2 and the PlayStation 3 great for me. And it was the games that were coming out on it, the exclusive games and Sony's first-party studios just delivering. Then I thought about those first-party studios, so I took Naughty Dog, PlayStation 2 generation. What did they do that generation for the PlayStation 2? Well, they did Jak and Daxter, then they did Jak 2, then they did Jak 3, then they did Jak X Combat Racing. Okay, that's 4 games within one generation. Now, I know what you're saying. Costs are higher now. Everything's more expensive now. Well, cost isn't a new concept. It existed back then. Those games in that time period were expensive, but they found ways to produce them. They found ways to create, make an engine, and then iterate on that engine and release the games. Be creative. It was more about the fun and being whimsical than it was about being photorealistic and topical. So they did 4 games. Then you look at what somebody like Sucker Punch did, right? You've got Sly 1, Sly 2, Sly 3, a lot of great games. Most of their first-party studios did 3 or 4 games a generation. Fast forward to PlayStation 5. Sucker Punch, Naughty Dog, they've done nothing for the PlayStation 5 this generation. A PlayStation 5 ground-up game, an exclusive built for that system. They've done nothing yet this generation. Last of Us 2 remakes aren't PS5 specific games. Ghost of Tsushima upscaled Ghost of Tsushima isn't a proper PS5 game. These studios are going to do 1 game a generation. You purchased a PlayStation 5 so that Naughty Dog can give you 1 proper PS5 game this generation. So that Sucker Punch can give you 1 proper PS5 game this generation. The only studio that's working the way that Sony first party used to work is Insomniac. They launched with Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, then Spider-Man 2 PS5 only console. Then you're going to get Wolverine, maybe this generation, maybe at the tail end of this generation. But all of these studios' games are going to inevitably be PlayStation 6 up-res, upscaled, remade, remastered games early in that generation. And then 5 or 6 years in, you'll get their PS6 offering. So is it really a huge selling point to buy a PlayStation for these first-party studios to deliver 1 game a generation, or to play their last generation games in a better way on your brand new system, versus what Microsoft is doing? Purchasing a gazillion publishers with tons of content, dropping it everywhere, putting it in Game Pass, leveraging the idea of high cost with high profitability by putting these games almost everywhere they possibly can exist. Now, I know that's not sexy. I know that's not something that most people can get behind when it comes to console wars. And there's a psychological thing that happens with people where they have to be on the winning side. And winning means sales. It doesn't always mean that, but in people's minds it does, and they have to be there. Plus, there's the nostalgia of PlayStation. If PlayStation 1 was your first console, or the first console where you started to think like an adult versus a child, that becomes the console that you stick with. I get that. But I'm playing games on my Xbox Series X, and I'm thinking, here's a console that I can put Xbox 360 games in the disk drive and play them. Or I can download them off of the store. They look better because they're on the Xbox Series X. They have that auto HDR, and they're upscaled because of being on the newer hardware. I can even play original Xbox games on the Xbox Series X. Not every original Xbox game, but there's access to those games. My PlayStation 3 digital library or physical library is gone. The digital games that I purchased on PlayStation 3, they're not even on the PlayStation 5. The digital games that I purchased on my Xbox 360, they just show up on my Series X. They're just there. I purchased Half-Life 2, the orange box, and there it is in 2024, about to be 2025, on my Xbox Series X, along with the other games that I purchased digitally. I've got a ton of Xbox 360 physical games, and I can just put them into the disc slot of the Series X and they work. Or I can, like I said, purchase those games from that generation. The fact that PlayStation just doesn't care about their old games is baffling to me. PlayStation 3, again, it's lost. It's completely gone. All of those gems are not accessible on the PlayStation 5 unless you want to subscribe to a service to stream them. That isn't an answer for me. So there's huge benefits to what Xbox is doing with the Series X. Then you factor in the fact that I'm not a big subscription service person. I hate recurring fees. I can't stand it. I cannot stand constantly having to give something or someone money. I like one-off purchases, and that's it. But nobody cares about that anymore. Everything is a subscription. I feel like if I walk outside and I want to inhale and exhale, eventually I'm going to have to pay somebody to do that monthly. But it does feel like that this idea of they're putting their games everywhere and it isn't sexy, and I come from a generation where that's a no-no, but I can see it. I can see the idea leveraging that to alleviate the cost and put yourself in a situation that Sony can't be in because they just don't want to be there. They can't. They cultivated a boutique console with boutique AAA games and an audience that must have them only on PlayStation. Even if it goes to PC, PC isn't really a thought for console gamers. If games are on a console and a PC, it's a console exclusive. No one cares. You guys care about that stuff. I don't. But I do feel like Microsoft has put themselves in a position to lose their way to winning, which again is a strange concept. The only thing that's negative, and this is another strange one, the only negative when it comes to Xbox is Microsoft. Microsoft is absolutely the albatross around the Xbox's neck. And then I started to think about this idea that they're going to let other manufacturers create their idea of an Xbox. Can you imagine somebody that isn't Microsoft putting all their eggs into an Xbox basket? Would you purchase an Apple Xbox? That's not going to happen. But you know, I don't know who they would have make an Xbox. They're not going to have Google do it because Google hates Microsoft. Microsoft hates Google. You can't even stream directly to YouTube from an Xbox still in 2024, which is insane to me. But, you know, I laid out all of these things. Backwards compatibility, the controller, which is still more comfortable with the offset sticks. The DualSense controller is the best controller. Haptic feedback, adaptive triggers, a speaker. Microsoft has to have a controller like that. But from backwards compatibility to just the access of generations of games that instantly look better. The idea that digital purchases are always there, even though I know you're going to say digital purchases can go away. I get it. But here I am in 2024 with games that I purchased on the Xbox 360 launch, still in my digital library, still got the horse armor for Oblivion. So I feel like they're in a really, really strong position and they just can't leverage these strengths because Microsoft is so bad at communicating them. They're not an entertainment company. They don't know how to make their strengths sexy. They just don't know how to do it. But I feel like the Xbox and what it offers in terms of just a quality of life experience, in terms of a legacy offering for your collection, in terms of their first party launching into their subscription service day and date for $20 versus a few months later, 4 months, 6 months, whatever it is, a full $70 purchase. Sometimes I sit and I think to myself, you know, I have a PlayStation 5 and I'm like, well, these games are coming to PlayStation 5. What's the point of buying an Xbox? And then I think to myself, hey, smacked ass, you're talking about spending $20 to play Indiana Jones versus spending $70 to play it 3 or 4 or 6 months later. I get the idea of owning. Owning is always better. Maybe you're a collector. I can promise you guys, as you get older, even these guys who sit in front of these walls of games, right? It doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. You can't take this stuff with you. You're collecting it for who? For what? For legacy? It's just, we're not there anymore. People have moved on. I get it. It's like hanging onto your horse and buggy when everybody has a car. It's just time to move to the automobile. That's where we are. There's nothing I can do about it. And I feel like Microsoft is in a very, very strong position with some of the strategies that they put forth in the tail end of this generation. And I'm interested to see how that plays out in the next generation. Because if they launch an Xbox that is clearly the most powerful system, period, right? There's no doubt third-party games are going to leverage it much better than the PlayStation 6. Their first party is humming with all of these studios and all of these publishers and all of these games, in addition to the legacy games that they have. By purchasing these publishers, I'd be interested to see what situation plays out next generation. Now, PlayStation is always going to be that brand that has that name recognition. You can't get around it. It's like buying Puma or Nike. Probably the same in terms of build quality and, just the feel of it on your feet, but Nike has that brand recognition. I don't even know if they make Puma anymore, do they? I'm fucking old. But or Reebok. They make Reebok, don't they? I don't know. That's how into sneakers I am. But I think that Microsoft is, I really think that my thought process has changed quite a bit. And it's centered around it was centered around Naughty Dog and their announcement of Interstellar. As soon as they announced it, I thought, we're about 5 years into this generation. 5 years into the PlayStation 2 life cycle, there were quite a few games from Naughty Dog. And it's strange to me that people are happy with these studios creating one property a generation or iterating on a property that they've created. It is strange to me. And I'm not sure Microsoft is any better. I'm not trying to say that they're better or worse. But it does feel like Sony's in a position where unless these one-off games every generation sell 10 or 20 million copies, and then they do the inevitable remaster or remake in order to recoup all of that cost while they buy themselves time for that other one new game in the PlayStation 6's generation, if they don't figure that out or that doesn't continue to happen, then what do? They've got their subscription service. You might start seeing some Sony first-party games dropping into that subscription service 6 months later or a year later or maybe even sooner. I do think that that is an inevitability with the cost of the type of games that Xbox and PlayStation gamers demand, the AAA, high-budget motion capture, huge salaries for voice actors, all of this stuff doesn't come for free. And the $70 nut doesn't cover that anymore. It's why you see rumors of GTA, the new GTA game, being $100, and people are going to complain, but they're going to buy it. Everything else went up except for video games. So if Sony and Microsoft are going to continue to do this, I feel like Microsoft put themselves in a position right now to be the strongest in terms of an ecosystem and a first party that can recoup cost very quickly and continue to create. Let me know what you think, though, in the comments section below. Am I crazy? Have I become an Xbot? I don't know. I was always an Xbox person, OG Xbox, Xbox 360, still a PlayStation person as well. But I feel like I'm onto something with the thought process of Microsoft and their position for the future. Again, let me know what you think in the comment section below. Thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one.